You feeling good? I'm feeling good. Let's talk about how to afford your medical school and residency interviews. So becoming a doctor in the US is expensive no matter how you cut it. What most people don't realize, however, is that it's not just the rising cost of medical school tuition that makes it so costly. Even just applying to medical school or to residency can easily drain an aspiring physician's bank account, and interviews often make up the bulk of these expenses. So let's discuss the various ways that you can make it through medical school or residency interview season without breaking the bank. What's going on, guys? For those of you who are new here, my name is Kevin Jabal, physician entrepreneur based in Las Vegas, formerly in plastic surgery. Now, whether you're a pre-med trying to get to med school or a med student trying to get into residency, application season is expensive. Not only are there various exam fees, application fees, and acceptance deposits, but also all the travel fees associated with attending actual interviews. You got the cost of airplane tickets, lodging, transportation, meals, etc. You can easily rack up thousands of dollars worth of expenses in the span of just a couple months. But that being said, it doesn't have to be this way. With a little bit of extra planning and work, you can significantly decrease your interview costs. And here's how to do it. Tip number one is to consider your competitiveness as an applicant relative to the programs that you're applying to. So if you're a highly competitive medical school applicant, you got a 4.0 GPA, 520 plus MCAT, and stellar extracurriculars and research, and you're applying broadly, then you probably don't have to do 20 plus interviews unless your interview skills are very weak. Instead, you should focus primarily on your top choices, as well as a few safety schools that you can still see yourself attending. And once you get that first acceptance letter, you should be even more discerning with which schools you choose to interview at. Once I got into UC San Diego, as an example, I canceled so many interviews, Cornell, Columbia, NYU, University of Hawaii, and many other programs just based on location alone. The same goes if you're a highly competitive residency applicant, although of course, your specialty choice does really change the calculus. So if you're AOA at a US MD school, you got 260 plus step scores, you're applying to less competitive specialties like family medicine, pediatrics, etc., then you probably don't need to attend 20 plus interviews to secure a spot at a desirable program. But that being said, if you're an IMG and you have average stats applying for a hyper-competitive specialty like plastic surgery, be prepared to attend as many interviews as possible and budget accordingly. If you're unsure how competitive your desired specialty is to match into, then check out the top 5 most competitive doctor specialties over on the Med School Insiders channel, link in the description. Tip number 2 is take advantage of credit card churning. I personally use this method to cover almost all of my hotels and definitely all of my flights for over 20 residency interviews during my 4th year of medical school. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, and you should proceed at your own risk. This is for informational purposes only. Now, although I've had a great deal of success with this credit card churning method, it's definitely not for everyone, especially people who are not responsible with their finances or struggle with meticulous organization. All right, so with that out of the way, credit card churning is the process of opening multiple credit cards for the sole purpose of earning the sign-up bonus, or SUB, and other benefits. Oftentimes, credit cards will offer bonuses in the form of points after you spend a particular amount of money over a designated time period. For instance, a card may offer 40,000 points if you spend $4,000 in the first few months of opening that card. These points can then be redeemed for various things, like airline tickets, hotel rooms, and other travel-related expenses. So in short, it's essentially free money. This might sound like a scam, however, it actually makes a lot of sense financially when you peel back the curtain. Credit card companies make money in 2 main ways. First, anytime you use a credit card, the business that you buy from has to pay the credit card company a percentage of that sale. This is why you'll see some businesses charge an additional fee when you use a credit card versus just paying with cash. The second way is that they make money off your debt. Credit cards often have really high interest rates, some even as high as 35%. So in short, they rely on people spending more money than they can afford and then charge them interest when they can't pay off their balance in full each month. For this reason, you have to be incredibly careful with how you use credit cards and make sure you're paying off your balance in full each month. The easiest way to do this is to never buy anything that you wouldn't actually buy with cash. So use it like you would a debit card and don't spend money that you don't have. Sounds easy, but a lot of people can't do this. And if you can't do this, then I would strongly recommend against using this method. But if you are responsible with your finances, this can be a great way to not only get thousands of dollars of free travel, but also build your credit. If you want to learn more and dive deeper into credit card churning, then check out this video I made up here. Tip number 3 is minimize your lodging expenses. Perhaps the most obvious way to do this is stay with friends and family whenever possible, but of course, that's not always possible. Many medical schools and residency programs offer student hosting programs. These programs allow you to stay with current medical students or current residents that are currently attending that program that you're interviewing at. Now, not only is this a great way to save money, but it's also a really great way to network, to ask questions, get that insider scoop on the program that you're interested in. But of course, there are some disadvantages that people don't usually talk about with these host programs. So first off, remember that these are med students and residents. They're not living some lavish lifestyle. So more often than not, you're gonna be sleeping on the couch or inflatable mattress in the living room or some common area, which might not be optimal if you have issues sleeping at night. Now for most of us, not a big deal, but something to consider if you're the type of person that this would negatively impact your sleep and therefore your performance on interview day. At several programs during my interviews, including at UCSD, where I actually went to med school, I stayed with students, but at other programs, particularly in cheaper cost of living cities, I just stayed at hotels. This next point applies mainly to medical schools, but tip number 4 is to check to see if your program offers travel reimbursement. When applying for medical school, you can apply for the Fee Assistance Program through the AAMC. This helps cover various medical school application expenses like MCAT fees, testing materials, and primary and secondary application fees. In addition to these discounts, there are some medical schools that will offer partial or full travel reimbursement for students interviewing at their programs who have been approved for the FAP. Now, although this is not guaranteed, it never hurts to ask, and it can end up saving you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over the course of the interview season. Tip number 5 is to schedule your interviews geographically to maximize efficiency. You can save a lot of time and money by being more intentional with how you schedule your interviews. For instance, let's say you live on the East Coast and you're applying to multiple programs on the West Coast. Then you want to try to schedule all of your interviews on the West Coast together so you can knock them all out on one trip, if possible. It's much more time and also cost effective to fly into California for an interview and then travel to Nevada, Arizona, Utah, etc. over the next few days for your subsequent interviews compared to making separate trips for each interview. I had this really epic 2-week window back when I was applying to medical school where it was 7 interviews almost exactly every other day for 2 weeks. And it was near perfect because if you have interviews back to back, you can get tired out. And if you have them more than just 1 day apart, or more than 2 days apart, I should say, then you're kind of just hanging around and waiting for the interview to happen. So every other day is what I think is optimal. And if you can do that consistently, you're gonna knock out all your interviews in no time at all. Now, spread out over the duration of the interview season, this can easily save you thousands of dollars in travel expenses and multiple days worth of your time. But do note, particularly when interviewing in residency, especially in smaller specialties, you won't get much flexibility. I had to fly to Ohio, not once, not twice, but on 3 separate occasions since most programs only had 1 or 2 interview days to choose from for plastic surgery, and they just didn't coincide with one another. Tip number 6 is to take advantage of virtual interviews. Due to the pandemic, virtual interviews have become much more common over the last few years, and that's both for med school and for residency. Given that you can attend an interview from the comfort of your own home, virtual interviews can be a great way to save both time and money. But that being said, they're not without their downsides. Physically visiting a program often gives you much more valuable information that you just simply don't get by going virtual. By visiting in person, you'll be able to see the campus, experience the surrounding area, interact with both students and faculty, and get a better sense of what it would actually be like to attend that program. Your rankings can change significantly just by physically visiting that city. You need to take this into consideration when you're deciding whether or not to do a virtual interview. A good compromise is to attend interviews at your top choices and go virtual whenever possible for your lower tier or backup schools. Last but not least, tip number 7 is to start saving early. Recognize that med school and residency interviews, they're gonna be expensive, so start preparing ahead of time. As with most things in life, it's better to be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to preparing for interview season. Set aside money specifically for your interviews and avoid using it for other purposes. Now, not only is this going to lessen the financial burden come interview time, but it's also gonna help minimize stress. An interview season is stressful enough on its own. You don't want to let financial stressors add to that and impact your performance. Saving ahead of time also helps minimize the total amount of debt that you accumulate throughout your medical education. Too often, students adopt this drop in the bucket mentality, and they rationalize that because they're already going into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for just med school tuition and living expenses, what's another few $1,000s here or there? But the issue by having this mentality is that they're spending much more money in the long run. Because of compound interest, what costs you $1,000 now can easily cost you double that by the time you end up paying back your loan. These numbers can be even higher if you're using credit cards to carry that balance because they often have much higher interest rates. Therefore, try to save money for interviews ahead of time instead of relying on loans or credit cards that you can't pay back right away. All right, guys, so as you can see, med school and residency interviews don't have to break the bank. With a little bit of preparation and know-how, you can save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over the course of your interview season. But I wanna know what you guys think. How did you pay for your interview expenses? Are there any tips I missed? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then check out this video or this other video. Much love, and I'll see you guys there.